my process of falling into this industry really came naturally because as you said, I mean, I talk chef. I mean, I think the reason why specifically my chef clients really like working with me is because I kind of understand the logic of how their brains work. I mean, I understand the logic of a kitchen. I have a deep appreciation for what they do, and I think they kind of sense that about me.
Welcome to What's on Your Plate podcast. This week, our guest is Joey Suarez. He is the managing consultant at Eat Public Relations, the firm behind the PR of some of the Philippines' most exciting dining spaces, like Lusso, Mano, and Hapag. Joey has a unique ability to cut through the noise and get the right stories out there. PR, you see, is a very crowded space. Many people work in it, but few people can truly shape narratives that matter. He also happens to talk chef. Today, we're talking about what makes great restaurant PR, the role of storytelling in building a brand, and the golden rule. PR can bring people in the door, but it's the business's responsibility to keep them coming back. Let's get into it. Well, I guess let's go with my first question.
Sure.
I think we met in Hapag and Aya, specifically in that beautiful bar, and you basically told me somewhat, I think, just a portion of your work life story, and I want to go to your first ever job in this industry, like how that really happened.
Oh, my very first job. My very first job, I was a production assistant for a newly launched all English television channel. I was their launch PA, so there were not a lot. In fact, I think I was the only PA as far as I know. And I was with the promotions team. So basically we created the commercials for TV shows that were appearing on the television, on the show, on the channel. And yeah, that was interesting. And me it was interesting, it was a lot of hard work. I remember having nights of actually sleeping in the studio because we had to launch a channel, and just that means there was just so much work to be done. But it was fun. I kind of actually really enjoyed myself, working in the TV channel, but I mean, it was tough. It was tough work. It was quite the baptism by fire situation.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think you need those moments when you're young. You need to go through those baptism of fire jobs where you don't realize, am I still gonna sleep? And you have that energy to do that then. Um,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's no way I would have done that job at my age. My God, I would have been dead for sure. For sure.
and one of the things that really struck me in that conversation we had is that I was asking, oh, like, how did you end up with this specific PR work? And you said to me, oh, I talk chef. And I was like, oh, it's like just one line. And I was like, that's really interesting that you said that. And I remember you talked to me about your first gig with Antonios. And can you tell us like how that happened and what that job entailed?
Um, I have to give full credit to my wife because frankly, I would have never gotten that job if she hadn't done did what she did, basically. So, I was having lunch with my wife at Antonio's. Tony Boy just happened to be walking around saying hello to the guests. And he came to our table and we had a really pleasant conversation. And he just off the cuff said, I'm trying to develop a website and it's not going well. People I'm talking to are not doing a great job. And so my wife said, "Oh, Joey writes about food. He can probably help you with the website." Just for the record, at that point in time, I had zero experience with building websites. So I was like, and I thought, I like Antonio's. I'll give it a shot. Why not? I mean, I have some time. So, I did. So he from that website became a 4-year engagement. He was my only client for the longest time, and I'm per I am eternally grateful for him for that. I mean, because he literally trusted a guy who had no business doing a website, doing comms, but now I have a job because of him, so.
Yeah. And how would you suggest for people to take care of their clients? Like, what was that relationship like? 4 years is, I think nowadays that's really a hard lifespan to keep a client. Of course, for the
Um,
good ones, they can do that. But for people that are young, they go into it to be like, oh, I want money, or I want, yeah, I just want a sale. But I think keeping clients, it's like harder to find a new client than to keep one, I think.
no, and I totally agree. I mean, I think I think in the end, it's like any other relationship. You navigate. You navigate the highs, the lows. You really just have to cultivate the relationship. And I think, and I mean, to be perfectly honest, Tony Boy and his team were the probably some of the best people to work with. I mean, they were very open to the idea of working with me. Um, Tony Boy loves saying, and I know he'll remember this. He always said he loves saying this to other people that when he was working with me, he did more work than he was supposed to. He did a lot more work. And I guess in the end, that's what you want to hear from your client. You want to hear that you know that you're engaging with them. That's how you keep them. You keep them involved. You let them know. You just let them know what is the benefit of doing all this work that you're doing. And in the end, that'll come back.
What were some of the things that you made him do extra on? Like
Oh,
something that a chef wouldn't
I
typically
don't
think about?
go into that, but well, but just to put it simply, I mean, Tony Boy at that period of time was not very into doing press. I mean, I think besides just not having a website for Antonio's, and at that point, Antonio's was already like the top of the top, but they were probably one of the few restaurants in the world that didn't have a website. I mean, that alone was a huge step. Um, I was also able to kind of help him with his branding, and I think they're still using that branding right now. I mean, Antonio's, Breakfast at Antonio's, even Balay Dako, now those are brands that have existed for a long time, and I was still there when we were developing those. So that's my little contribution to the group. But yeah, I mean, it's just really opening up to all my clients, basically the possibilities of how I can help them improve their business, how comms can help improve their business.
Can we talk a little bit about brand?
Sure.
Because you said it's like your little contribution, but I do think that thinking about the branding, thinking about how a chef deals with press plays such a big part nowadays. How do you
Yes, it
think
does.
young people
Yes, it
should
does.
approach like their brand as a chef? Because the other day I was looking at Chef Josh Boutwood's website and I was like, okay, someone's really thinking about his brand. It's not like just a business card. Everything just looks so seamless. How should a young chef like think about it?
Um, I guess it's simple and complicated in one felt swoop. It's really for me, it's really just knowing your story. I think it starts from there. Just really understanding who you are as a chef, who you are as a restaurateur. I mean, you are as a home cook, a home baker. I mean, just understanding who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, uh, knowing what your product is inside and out, um, and being able to find knowing who your customers are or your guests are, and just trying to find ways to reach out to them. I mean, it sounds it sounds really simple, and then actually, in a lot of ways, it is simple, but in in many ways, sometimes it's hard, especially for, and I'm sure my chef clients will understand this. If they had a choice, they would probably prefer to just stay in the kitchen and not have to deal with people or press. This is probably why they chose to be in the kitchen to begin with. But I mean, I guess a lot of them are now figuring out that this is part of the job because you go to culinary school, they don't exactly teach you media training. It's not necessarily part of the curriculum. So that's something you just learn or you have to learn eventually.
Yeah. And it depends who you're with, actually. Like, if you're surrounded with the best, let's say if they're working with you or, other chefs that you've worked with, I think they'd get that exposure. But what I noticed with some of our culinary students, they're very shy. And when you're shy, you tend to be very vulnerable. And it can really beat up your confidence. Let's say your first job, and then you have to work like so many hours and no one's telling you, oh, think about your brand, think about your identity. They're just like, just work the hours and it'll just come out. Um, I don't actually, I guess, how do you train yourself to be even media ready or more out there?
Practice.
Practice. Okay.
Again, it's gonna come well, okay, before even practice, it's gonna come back to really, again, really just self-examination. It really is. I mean, it's as simple as really just understanding what your story is, like who you are. Again, we're gonna come back to that. We're gonna come back to knowing who you are, knowing who your brand is, knowing what your brand is, knowing what your product is, and knowing who your audience is. That's basic, but to be media ready is really practice. There's really this getting interviewed, having your picture taken. I mean, it's a completely unnatural state. This is not normal. This is not normal at all. So it's just practice. Um, Being ready for an interview, I drill my clients over and over again about the questions. I don't drill them necessarily in the just asking questions that I think that are going to be talked about. It really is a process for me because what I literally do when I meet a new client is I literally have hours and hours of just really talking about who they are, what their product is, and what the story is. I mean, I basically kind of help them figure out in conversation what the story is. I mean, I help them develop the story as we go along. So that kind of helps the process. And that's kind of the beginning already of learning how to become media savvy because in the process of telling me their story, they kind of figure out, "Oh, okay, that's an interesting thing I should talk about. Oh, that fact about my product, we should really highlight that." So, I mean, that's for me is part of the training process. Um, but in the end, it's really just talking, talking and talking until you're exhausted from talking about yourself and your what you do, and that's the only way, really.
How did you train yourself to do this? I mean, did it just come out naturally or did you read up like, yeah, because is there a PR school in the Philippines? I feel like I fell into this role because the person that was handling the role left. And I
And you were
didn't even
thrusted into
under
the role.
yes, they were like, "Oh, she writes, she speaks, maybe she can do this." I was like, at first I thought because I saw the people that were doing that role and they were so nice, they were so friendly, and I am not. Like I could be now you know me, I am friendly, but I love like a weekend with just books. If I could do that all my life, I would, but I understand the job it takes talking to people. So I was like, no, I can't do that. It's very extroverted. And they said, no, you can. And later on, you kind of navigate that process by reading up on what it is and seeing what other people do. How did you do it?
Oh. Like you, like I said, I literally fell into the role. Um, I would love to say that I was trained to do this. I wasn't. If I'm being really honest, I wasn't. I guess because I have such a passion for food, my wife loves joking that 90% of my brain is about food, that even when I'm not working, I'm literally reading books about food, watching TV about food, watching movies about food, talking about the next meal we're gonna have after while we're eating lunch. So I mean, my process of falling into this industry really came naturally because as you said, I mean, I talk chef. I mean, I think the reason why my chef clients, specifically my chef clients, really like working with me is because I kind of understand the logic of how their brains work. I mean, I understand the logic of a kitchen. I have a deep appreciation for what they do, and I think they kind of sense that about me. And it also kind of helps that I also speak a little bit of corporate, which kind of helps with what I do as well. So, I mean, corporate, I also speak a little bit of journalist. So, I mean, I kind of understand the things that I need to know in order to do my job well.
Yeah. Well, I have this picture of you always in the corner in a restaurant, and it's like a chameleon. Like basically, you can pretty much talk to anyone, and like that, you have the corporate speak, you have the chef speak. You can really pinpoint on what people are like, and I have to say, for someone that's just trained by like just by way, have the most complete toolkit I've ever received.
Oh,
When
well,
I do
thank you.
write about events or dinners, and it's how did you pick that up? Like having this is for anyone that's gonna start a restaurant, these are the things that I think people don't think that they should have. They just think people are just gonna come to the restaurant. Like you have photos, you have the press release, you have anything that you need to tell a good story, it's pretty much in that folder.
Think because I I had the privilege of writing about food prior to even starting with my first job at Antonia's. I mean, I kind of already realized that there are barriers to getting a story out. I mean, the writing a story in itself is difficult already. So I guess the reason why I try to make sure when I approach journalists or editors or corporate partners, I mean, I try to provide them with everything that they need so that when they have to write a story or write a report, it just becomes easier. They don't have to worry about anything except the writing. Um, I remove barriers essentially. I remove the obstacles for people to do their jobs. I mean, it just seemed perfectly natural for me to put in the extra effort because if you make it easy, they'll write a story about you.
Yeah,
If your
for sure.
pictures are beautiful, more likely they'll share it.
Yeah, that's what yeah, I was dealing with another PR company in the UK, and they were saying photos are crucial nowadays. It's not just a story, it's you need it to be almost publish ready, and
Oh,
um
for sure.
yeah, curious
And
about
some
this. Yeah.
and nowadays, especially since a lot of publications, a lot of online websites don't necessarily have the kind of budget to send out photographers to shoot restaurants nowadays. Usually providing them with photographs already is a huge help for them.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna ask you one of the questions that a student
Sure.
asked. She's a former marketing manager, no, marketing
Okay.
person, sorry, for
Okay.
um the moment the moment group, and she was asking, like, she wants to get into culinary. She wants to be an R&D chef, and she asked me, what is the best social media format to get publicity? Is there one? Like, is it reels? Like, before it was all these newspaper, now it's people are just saying reels. But in your observation, what's been the best that gets people in the
Um,
door?
I okay. I mean, I guess it's all relative. I mean, it really depends on who your target market is. I mean, if I was opening a boba shop, I'd probably go to TikTok and Reels. If I was probably aiming for a higher end, um, a slightly more mature audience, I'd probably do Instagram or even Facebook. But here's the thing: it's not the the cascade of information now is so complex that you have to be on multiple levels all the time. I mean, I guess for me, it's really not so much that you have to have a social media presence. You also have a presence in long form. So like you still have to get written by media groups to really provide people with more information. Because while Instagram is great, it it's very it's very quickly forgotten. So I mean, you people will see something by some influencer and say, "Oh, that looks interesting." They'll probably Google you, and they need to find those other places where they have more information about your product, your restaurant. Uh, and that's what I try to do. I try to make sure that my clients have a presence in at all levels: social media, print, online, TikTok. If someone done requests for TikTok, um, it's just you have to be everywhere, appealing to everyone at some point.
I do wonder about that. Like, yes, everywhere. And if you have a lean team, Like, let's say you don't have like the massive budgets of big
Okay.
restaurant
Um,
groups.
Instagram.
Okay.
If I had to choose one, I would choose Instagram. Um, but you know what? In the end, for me, the most powerful tool will always be word of mouth. I mean, I could never. I try to create that for all my clients, but I mean, sometimes it's almost magic in a lot of ways. I mean, people talking about their experience at your restaurant or trying your product will beat everything else. Everything else. I mean, if your best friend says this restaurant was amazing, of course you're going to try it because your best friend told you. So word of mouth is still more powerful than anything else. I mean, social media amplifies that absolutely, but word of mouth.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question I always hear from people when they're dealing with
Sure.
PR. How how do you deal with this conversation when someone asks you about ROI and PR? Because I mean, it's not cheap to invest in PR. I think it's a good investment. With the school itself, we have stories coming out every month, every other month, and it's helped us a lot. One of my favorite feedback with the school is like, we keep seeing you everywhere, like, and it's almost they think it's annoying already, but in a way, that's part of the PR, right? Like, not to be annoying, but to be where you open the newspaper, there's something there. If you open TikTok, there's something there, and it convinces you like, "Hey, I should really check this brand out." Um,
Sure.
and and if let's say you're spending, I don't know, like 100,000 pesos to 1 million on PR or more, how do you defend like the ROI, or you don't?
If I'll tell you what I tell my clients. If a marketing manager, if a PR consultant, if a communications consultant, a marketing consultant tells you that I can promise you high ROI, um, I would run, frankly, because there honestly, no marketer, no communication specialist, no PR specialist could ever promise you a return on investment. What I tell my clients is this: I can promise you that people working with me, people will show up at your restaurant, they'll try your product, but in the end, it's going to be still you, because right now in our economy, we're still that kind of economy that we require return guests, return clients, return customers. We're not a one shot deal kind of place at the moment, not like Hong Kong or Singapore. um in the end, you have to provide the best possible experience for your guests or your customer. That's how you're going to get ROI. I can show people where the door is, but for them to come back, that's that's on the client.
Yeah. I do love that. It's like, if anyone asks me what PR is, like, yeah, you can show them to the door, but you can't like keep them coming back. Like, that's basically what
Exactly.
it is.
I mean, yes,
Yeah. Uh, you have a lot of brands that open in the Philippines, like that have come from overseas, and they get this massive PR buzz. How do you maintain momentum besides really looking after them? Is there I've heard people say like, oh, collect emails. Um, I don't know, other ways to do that. But how do you keep that PR going so that you do have a healthy, sustainable restaurant a year from now?
again, I mean, I again, I'm gonna come back to the basics. In the end, having a good product, having a great experience, creating a a user experience, a guest experience that is um unique and just I mean just delightful, I guess is the word. That's fun and enjoyable, or I mean whatever you're trying kind of experience you're trying to create, unique. Um that for me will sustain any business above and beyond. Of course, you can do the usual, do products, do menus, collaborations, doing special events. I mean, those are great and those help create buzz. But in the end, for the long term, it's really still, I mean, it's the basic. It's really just having something so extraordinary or just really providing such a delightful experience for your guests that they'll keep coming back and that'll sustain anything. I mean, people will continue to post about you, people will continue talking about you with their friends. I mean, it should it should cascade in the end. I mean, so I I kind of like the analogy of a snowball. Like essentially I send down a snowball. What I'd like to see at the end is really literally an avalanche of people posting and talking about your product, talking about your restaurant. I mean, in the end, I can get it started, but really, it's really about what you give back to your guests or your customers that will really help sustain the business.
Yeah. Practical side, like how does one
Sure.
budget for PR? Like I know there's a range, there's a mix of stuff, and we don't have to pinpoint exactly what the price is, but yeah, just give a range on what people should expect. Because I think I had one person I dealt with, and she was saying that basically she had a certain standard rate that I've always seen in PR, and then someone came in and said, "Oh, I'll do all these brands, but I don't know, let's say that same rate, but for all five brands or something." So basically, people
Okay.
are being cutthroat, like the lower the price and such. Yeah, what should people expect when they want to engage a PR agency or PR person? You
I don't know
can
how to
give a
answer that.
ballpark, like
I don't want to give up. I don't think I can give a ballpark. I think in
yeah,
the end, you like many things in life, you get what you pay for in the end.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I think for me, more importantly, find a communications consultant, PR a publicist that you really get along with. I mean, for me, whether it's a short-term engagement or a long-term retainer, I mean, in the end, you really do need to get along with the people you work with, especially in comms, because if you don't have a lot of faith in the people that you work with, then I mean, it's not going to work. The authenticity of the experience will be lost. I mean, you wanna have a you wanna have a solid relationship with your comms person, to the point where that comms person kinda really understands you, understands the product, and really does believe in what you do. So, I really can't put a value on that because in the end, I guess in the end, you'll find the person that you need.
yeah. I mean, I ask you this because, like, let's say, people will say, oh, marketing budget 5%, 10% of, because I think it's important for business owners to know their percentages. And when I was comparing the rates of the UK and the Philippine rates of PR, so in the UK, I saw there was a range from £1,000 to £6,000 per month. And then I was like, "Oh, it's pretty UK rates are not great." I mean, UK salaries are also not that great. I think, okay, it's about up to par to Philippine rates also. Yeah, so that's I think what you should be budgeting for. I'll say it. Joey won't say it.
I say y you need to pay for the communications consultant that you need and want.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. But how do you manage clients' expectations? Because I know some people will, let's say, they'll pay 100,000, 200,000, and they didn't get the coverage they wanted. They got probably, just clickbait stuff. How do you make sure that doesn't happen where the client goes, I paid you 100 to 200,000, which is not still a lot for, I think, a small business owner.
Yes.
Um, and I got just clickbait stuff.
How do I manage that?
Yeah. I know you'll never have to manage this because I think you manage your clients well. But if you were in this position,
And I have been in a position.
okay. Okay.
I honestly speaking, because I mean, even before I start an engagement, I really am very clear that there are no assurances, and I'm very clear about that. I say, I'll tell, listen, you know what, I will provide you with the best effort that I can give you, but really in the end, there's really no assurance of anything. I mean, I like I said, I will get people through the door. I will try to get as much press as I can for you, but I I don't I don't pay for stories to come out. I don't I I really in the end tell my clients, let's work together on this. Let's try to build your brand. Let's try to get the word out about what you're doing and how you're doing it. I mean, that's all I can really assure them. You want to call that management? Sure. Yes, it is in that way. It is creating the, I guess, to answer your question, it's really about managing expectations. I feel that if you're upfront and tell them, we can get you this, this, and this, but there's always that possibility there may not be interest for whatever reasons. I always am very clear about that. But I think I've been generally lucky, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I've been able to work with clients and work with media people who really have a genuine interest in the stories that I've been wanting to tell. So I I've been fairly good to my clients. So I mean, while I do try to manage all their expectations about what can happen after working with me, I've been lucky.
Yeah. Um, do you know of any, or like, what are some of the faux pas that you've seen in kind of this industry? If you can share, like, let's say one example is like influencers who bring 20 people when they're invited like, just two people, and then they'll bring their whole family, and then they'll make it like a treat for them. Because I've seen
To
that
me,
happen, right?
all that happens more often than I would like, sadly. Um,
Yeah.
I'm very I I spend a lot of time really choosing the people that I work with. And that's not just clients. That really is also with the media, with the KOLs, influencers that I work with. I mean, I really spend a lot of time looking at who they are. I mean, like doing a little bit of research on everyone I work with because in the end, I want to provide them with an experience. I mean, of course, it's transactional in a sense, but I mean, in the end, I treat them like guests. I mean, I want them to have the best time while they're coming in to dine at my clients' restaurants. Um, so I've kind of avoided that pitfall um, of having media or or KOLs come in and take advantage of my client, which I really try to avoid as much as possible.
Yeah. If for people that don't know what a KOL is, what's the difference of a KOL and a influencer? Because I hear KOL dropped a lot, influencer dropped a lot.
It's pure marketing speak, but essentially it's just an influencer in sheep's clothing, really.
Okay.
In
Is there a
marketing
difference?
clothing, really.
Is there a
Um,
difference?
only in the brand.
Okay. Interesting. And is there,
Like only in the brand. But I mean, there are different kinds of KOLs. I mean, I mean, it really depends on what you're looking for and what you want that influencer to do for your client or for your brand.
of course. Um, I do have a couple questions I want to ask you. Let's go through them. I don't know if this is something you would answer, but let's see. People love to be controversial, so someone did ask me this. Okay, this one's fun. What's the best advice to give to restaurateurs when their store is attacked on Facebook? Remember the issue of Chef Tatong or the private screenshots that were shared by the complainant, and of course, Aurora, where one of the owners casually dropped the word lawyer will be consulted. But anyways, all these like fires online. What do you think is like, as a PR person, what's the approach here? How do you deal with people who just are aggressive online?
First, I tell most of my clients not to look at their comments.
Okay.
And for those who do have to look at their comments, look at them. I mean, it's human nature. You will have 99 of like stellar comments about your restaurant or your product, but they'll focus on that one comment that was just terrible. Um, I mean, I'm the type of person who always says, read it. If you choose to read it. Um, Try to figure out what was the intent. I mean, a lot of people, sadly, online who complain about a restaurant or a product tend to not really. It's not so. The gripe is not necessarily always what they say while they're writing it, what they wrote. It's usually something else. Um, I really try to understand the intent of the writer. Um, and try to address it as well. Actually, I always encourage them to try to address every complaint. If they choose to address the complaint, address it directly. Try to contact the person directly, frankly, if that's possible. Try to make amends if it is possible. If they feel that it's necessary, then please try to address the complaint. And that, I mean, of course, absolutely, it's part of it. Just that's basic customer service 101. Um, there's really no need to be nasty online. I mean, it makes for a great story. It makes for great um, conversation around the dinner table. But I mean, in the end, this is a business of people. I mean, and if you just deal with people on a person to person level, usually things will get resolved quite quickly. But in the end, for me, truly, if a guest has a complaint, I mean, try to address it at the moment it happens. It's probably the best way and the quickest way to resolve it. Because as things start to evolve, as things start to move online, it becomes more and more difficult to really recover from that. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually the most common question I got for this topic. It's really
And then
interesting.
I can imagine. I mean, but it's never a one size fits all situation. I mean, it would really depend on the gravity of the complaint, who the complainant is. I mean, not necessarily who the complainant is, but what the complaint was. And I mean, the situation and the intent of the person who had written the complaint to begin with. I mean, that will always determine what would be the best response in the end.
Yeah. Do you reckon Filipinos are more aggressive online than face to face? Like in
Oh, for
person,
sure.
in the restaurant, they'll be like, "Oh, so nice," and then and they'll start
Oh,
writing
no, for
something.
sure. Absolutely. I mean, we are here by nature non-confrontational in general. And so I feel that the wall of anonymity that the internet provides is gives them an opportunity to just vent, which I think is kind of sad because I mean, in the end, if you really truly had a legitimate complaint and if you had addressed it immediately, the large majority of restaurants or product sellers will always address the concerns very, very quickly if you did it immediately.
Yeah, I think before you write a bad review or something really destructive, I really encourage people to send it to the restaurant email, or if you're not don't want to say it in person, just send it. Like I think you can just really destroy the chances of a restaurant in making
Sure, no,
it.
no, absolutely. And I hate to say this, but sometimes, I mean, I feel that the writing of a complaint in public on social media is really should be a last resort because truly, if you really just want a concern addressed, or if you want to have a grievance corrected, I mean, there are quicker ways to do it. But sometimes it really isn't so much about having a grievance corrected more like a grievance shared, I guess is the
Yeah.
right way to say it.
Yeah. So that's common. I always get that. I think I got like 5 of those in different versions. So it's interesting to get that question in many forms. Let's go to something not too controversial. Let's talk about your year and what's been some of your favorite projects that you've worked on. I know you have,
Wow.
if anything,
Um,
you have the best invites.
oh, thanks. Uh, Hapag for sure. Um, which you've been to a few events. Um, Working with Margarita has been amazing. I mean, I came on board last year to help launch her new brand, and I'm continuing to still work with her now because I knew she was a busy woman. I had no idea until I was part of her team to really understand how busy she was. But I mean, it's been an amazing experience. I mean, she is as amazing as people think she is. I mean, she is truly she is truly deserving of that iconic image that people have of her. I mean, she'll for lack of a better word, I mean, she's just amazing. I mean, that and honestly, I've learned so much working with her. Um, Amazing. What else? What else have I done?
What's one example of something you've learned from her that you didn't have before working on her
Oh, the
brands?
power of generosity.
Okay. That's perfect. Explain a little bit
The
more. What does
power of
that mean?
generosity. Um, for people who have actually known her, I mean, people will always say that she is the most generous person that you'll probably ever meet. I mean, she's almost generous to a fault. Um, I think but what I find so interesting about that is that she it always comes back. I mean, she gives of her time, she gives, she goes that extra mile for her clients, for her guests, for her business partners, but interestingly enough, that generosity comes back to her in different ways. I mean, so it's interesting. I mean, I as a concept, I kind of understood that, but I mean, just to see it happen in practice, it's really interesting to me. So I mean, there is something to be said about being open-hearted, especially in this industry. So
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's really, I think people who are open hearted, they're people you want around. And this is something that came up with another PR company. And they were saying that, with young chefs or people that are just starting out a restaurant, you need to be generous with your time, like network with other chefs. Do you think that's important? Especially if, like I noticed with Filipino chefs, like they're very friendly with other chefs. They're not like stuck in their kitchen or their restaurant. The ones that do really well, they
the
have a good
case that
network.
to be honest, that wasn't the case. I mean, if we go back like probably as early as 10 years ago, was not the case at all. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, chefs were very competitive. There were not many I mean, they were very they didn't really share who their suppliers were with each other. I mean, they saw each other as competition. If they did socialize, it was very how do I put this? Surface, a very high hello kind of situation. But now the new generation of chefs have really reached out to each other. I mean, they share information, they share suppliers, they love complaining to each other about how terrible some guests are or how terrible these suppliers are. I mean, they gripe together. I mean, it's really interesting to see that over time they've really actually become a community, which is actually kind of cool.
Yeah, I want to
Is it
know about, yeah,
okay, to answer your question, is it necessary? It's not necessary, but it's good to have
okay, yeah. I do encourage people to get out there more, not to be stuck in your,
because in
yeah,
the end, nobody will understand you more than a fellow chef
yeah. And you need that
or
support
a fellow
system.
exactly.
It's same as like PR, any industry is like have a support group. It's not Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's basically a support group. Um,
Yeah.
you said something interesting, which is about customers. What are
Sure.
some, have you, what's like the most bizarre or like strangest behavior that you've heard a customer do and you just like think there's no time for that anymore in the restaurant space? Like if there were commandments from Joey, like don't do this, don't do this in a restaurant.
Oh, it's pretty basic for me, and I really think people should really truly stop doing this. Stop being rude to your front of house. Stop being rude to your server. There is no need for it. I mean, yes, I mean sometimes there is bad service, and yes, complain. Please feel free to complain. But to be rude to your server for no particularly good reason, um, completely unnecessary. So please, I wish people would stop doing that. It's not necessary. They work hard. If you're on if you're standing up for a good 12 hours every day, I mean, it's a tough job. It truly, truly is. And especially at the level that some of my clients are at, I mean, where every detail of the dining experience is manicured and choreographed. It's a really difficult job. I would not want to be front of house. It's demanding on a different level.
Yeah, I think it's one of
And you
the
have to do it with
hardest
a
jobs.
and you have to do it with a smile on your face the whole time. So, yes, please stop being rude to your servers or your chefs or anybody really, but I mean, in general, just please stop being rude. It's unnecessary.
Yeah, you do wonder like there are people that are nicer to the chefs, like let's say the business owner, but then to front of staff, they have a very different treatment. Like I remember there was this a guy who told me he tests out his dates by putting in them situations where they have to deal with the front of staff, and it's a good way to test if a person is actually a good person or not a good person. So, just don't be rude, do just
Agree with that actually. I
yeah.
mean, I kind of really truly agree with that. I think how you deal with people, no matter who the person is really a clear indication of the kind of person you are in general.
Yeah. God, this has become like a therapy session. Then
Oh, I get that. Believe me, I get that all the time.
so PR is like therapy basically. That's how I'm going to sum up this
Yes.
podcast episode.
In a lot of ways it is. I mean, I yes, it is. I mean, and you if you were to ask my clients, I mean, I really dig deep, especially with a lot of my clients. I really dig deep into trying to understand who they are and their brand, and it practically becomes a therapy session on some level.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I want to ask you, I'll be your therapist today. What's been your what's been your favorite failure in your career? Do you have one?
I read this question and I'm like,
I love hearing this.
okay, I'm gonna disappoint you a little. I actually don't have necessarily a favorite failure. Not that I haven't had any. I mean, I've had more than my share, to be honest. And I've had a lot of success as well, so which I'm really kind of happy about as well. So I balance the equation. But I guess what I want to share in the end of the two lessons that I kind of took away from most of these failures. One, learn the power of no. I mean, learn the power of being able to tell people that you can't do this or it's not possible because it will save you a lot of heart. And it'll save you and your client a lot of heartache. Also, learn how to manage expectations. I mean, learn how to be able to be perfectly upfront with no matter who you're dealing with. Tell them exactly what you feel you can get out of this. Because in the end, I mean, again, it just makes for a more pleasant working environment moving forward.
Those are
So yes, there have been failures, but I honestly I try to look on the bright side of most of them if I can.
yeah, no, I get it. I have so many. I could do like a whole episode on just hospitality failures. It's a lot of fun to hear, like, I guess people that are very comfortable with their career now is like, what were the screw ups? But I get you. It's
Oh,
being able to say
too many
no
to
and
name.
being able to manage expectations is like, those are superpowers that not a lot of people know
It
how to do.
is.
Yeah.
I think in any industry that requires you to deal with a lot of human emotion and people in general, I mean, I think that's always a challenge. I mean, to really just be able to really work with people in a very deep way is always hard. It'll always be difficult. It really requires you to really get involved. And that's probably why I actually kind of like my downtime because I
What do you
don't have
do
to
on your
do
down? What do you actually do in your downtime? Stare, like, mung out? Like, what does Joey do at his downtime?
um I spend time with my family. As corny as it sounds, I love spending time with my family. I I I tried playing golf when I was much younger. I thought it was
Wow.
very boring. So I've now decided that I'm just going to do sport climbing and that'll be my golf. And
Okay.
that's my goal.
Yeah.
So when I just feel the need to be alone with my thoughts, I really go climb a wall, quite literally.
Yeah. I think people need hobbies. I wouldn't say that now.
You
As
know,
someone,
I'm a huge advocate, and of course, I mean, I read, I, I, like my wife says, I read about food. I
yeah.
watch food. I watch movies about food. I mean, it's an all encompassing thing for me. I mean, it's not just a passing hobby for me. I mean, I, I like the process of making food.
I'm the same. Sometimes I have to actually switch off and be like, okay, I need to pick another hobby besides food.
Well,
Because,
that's why I climb. So I mean, because
yeah,
I have to work off the food somehow. So
yeah. And what's been like your best investment in your career? Like, is there one like good
oh, time.
time?
I think I've spent enormous amounts of time, one, learning about food, like as I've said multiple times of this in this interview. But I think time spent with my clients. I mean, I am very lucky to have worked with some of the best, and we're still working with some of the best people in the industry in the Philippines and abroad. Um, just getting to sit down and talk to these people and just understanding their craft and understanding them as people. I mean, that for me has not just been a great investment, it has been a privilege for me. I mean, and that for me has always come back. I mean, the people that I get to work with have always contributed so much more to me. So as a person, so I always feel very lucky to get to work with the people that I work with. I'm lucky that way. I mean, I get to choose the people I work with, which a lot of people cannot say.
Yeah, but I
Sad.
think that's having a good filter, right? And being informed. And you've done that a lot with learning about food and just
Yeah,
knowing.
that's why, and thus me talking chef.
Yes, we're gonna end with that. But last probably a couple questions. I'm trying to uncrack your brain, but like every PR person that's really good, it's really hard to crack them. I think they have a certain um I would say every PR person I know that's really good, they have a good um enigma, or like is it like a like fairy dust? Like I can't explain it to you, but they have a certain character that's quite strong and like just gracious that you can't crack them, or you can't find the little, it's like they hold the secrets to a restaurant, or like they hold the secrets of a chef. And I
There's
wonder,
no
like, there's always secrets in hospitality, I think. But curious on what books kind of changed you, or like podcasts or anything that you consumed that was like life changing.
wow. Ooh, that's hard. Um, Bourdain, but that's everyone really.
Yeah.
Um, anything and everything that Bourdain has done. Dan Barber, oh my God, what was the name of that book? Dan Barber wrote about, he had this. I'm gonna call it a tome. It's quite it's not super thick, but it's a fairly difficult read. I'm trying to remember the title of the book. Ruth Reichel wrote some Garlic and Sapphires. Garlic and Sapphires. As a food writer, that was my guidebook. I mean, that book was amazing on so many levels. So, but I mean, and of course, Ruth Reichel and yourself is super iconic. So, I mean, to 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 just aspire to write like her, it would have been amazing. Uh,
Oh, classic. Yes. That's also a good
Super.
one.
I mean,
Yeah.
I read this, and as nerdy as it sounds, I read this for fun.
That's when you know you really love your what you're doing. Oh,
Jeffrey
yes.
Epstein,
Okay. Yeah.
Steingarten. Sorry. Uh, Amazing. Not probably the most pleasant person on the planet, but he can write. So, oh, and this book, third played by Dan Barber,
Okay. A note on the future food.
totally, totally changed my perspective on what the dining experience could be.
I if there's one advice I have anyone who listens to this is like listen to and read more long form stuff. I think it's
Oh yeah, please eat more long form stuff. I mean, I love a good reel, but I mean, sometimes you just gotta read a book.
yeah, you get so much value from a book. I agree. Like I when I first got into writing in Melbourne, I attended a Ruth Rachel workshop and I just loved her story. And I remember she was saying, okay, we're gonna think of the different words to say delicious or something like that. And I was like, wow, you can think of so many words to say or use rather than just use the word delicious. And even with chefs, like
But isn't that always the problem that writers have, especially food writers? How can I say delicious without saying delicious?
I'm personally not a food writer. I'm more of a people writer. So when I write, I really love to write about the struggles of the person and why they decided to make a restaurant. So you won't catch me writing the dishes like specifically. I've never been that. But you find your own character. It's again when you
Oh,
say
for
like
sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But
And
in the end, I mean, I mean, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you actually have to write about the food, it's hard because in the end, you'll start like figuring out, you'll be looking through a thesaurus trying to find the right word for delicious. Because you can always say delicious so many times before people think you are just basically don't know any other words. It's kind of sad.
yes, there's a great book. I'll try to link it. It's like the flavor. It's got like a flavor wheel in the front, and I thought that was fun to just see the different
Oh,
flavors.
I know that book.
Is it Flavors Dictionary? I can't remember, but it's a
So
fun
yeah,
book.
something like that. Yes, but essentially it's a dictionary. Yes.
Yes. So anyone who listens to this, please read more, consume more, and just be obsessed. I think in a healthy way, and have a hobby. Really.
No, I think if you can just commit yourself to just reading a book, I mean, there's so much more information that you can get from reading a book than from watching reels.
Yeah.
And if you really I'm gonna go back to what my one of my college professors told me is, I mean, you learn how to be a better writer by reading. That's the best way.
Yeah. No, I get that. And writing every day. I think you should write every.
And
It's
writing every
like
day. I mean, yeah, and I think the long form writing about food, it's specific, and even the dining experience is a really becoming a lost art. Not a lot of people do it anymore because obviously we're all tied down by number of clicks. I mean, length of a document online is always going to be much shorter now. I mean, which is kind of sad if you really ask me.
yeah. And do you get tired of it? When people think about clicks, views, impressions, like how many?
It's part of the job.
Okay.
I accept it as the reality of the job, but I will always appreciate people who take the time to write long form.
Okay.
And
And
I actually make a special effort for them, to be perfectly honest.
it's not a lost art, but it's like it's a little dying and someone
It's
needs to
rare.
they need to resuscitate it. I would say give it a bit of
Absolutely.
CPR. Um,
Absolutely.
I don't know if the young kids or like our students would read because we don't. I don't think people are borrowing books. We have books, but I don't think people are borrowing books at the moment.
Oh, I'm sure they're going online for their recipes or like watching a TikTok to see how to make something online and go to YouTube or whatever. But I mean, I still love, I know I can get a recipe online, but I still like buying cookbooks, which I know is really fuddy duddy of me. But I mean, I love cookbooks. I love how they're made. I love how they look. I love, on some level, I actually just like the feel of paper while I'm going through a cookbook because I learned how to cook through a cookbook. So
Yeah. I mean, it's a different experiences for everyone. I mean, I
absolutely.
know a lot of people who get their news from the phone. I still like to look at a newspaper. I love podcasts. So uh, anything that will help you consume more than something longer than 30 seconds would be fabulous. I think,
Absolutely, and I agree. I totally agree.
and my last question, and then we can
Sure.
wrap up, is what would be your last advice for anyone who's trying to engage PR, whether it's an agency, professional, or freelancer, or new to it, basically.
Know your story. I mean, listen, I mean, I could make it super complicated. I could throw more marketing terms at you. I could do more jargon if you want me to, but it comes down to the super basic element of understanding who you are as a business person, who you are as a chef, who are you, what is your product, who are you trying to reach out to. If you capture that, that's half the battle because in the end, this word gets thrown a lot around nowadays. Authenticity. I think people out of sheer necessity have a better BS radar and they can really truly sense when you're not being authentic to what you do. Um, for me, you get that nailed down, that's half the battle. I mean, that's already half of the job that you need to do. And the PR person, if you do your own PR, if you do your own comms, or if you hire someone to do it, I mean, once you have that clear, it it's so much easier.
Yeah, you'd be surprised that there's a lot of people that don't know how to tell their
I
story.
believe believe me,
I mean, I think you
met,
shouldn't be. I think you know.
most met most of them. So I mean, in the end, that's part of my job. I That's why I kind of joke sometimes that my job is part therapist as much as it is communications consultant. I mean, I really try to figure out with them. I consider it always a partnership. I try to I try to pull it out of them because everyone really has the story there. You just have to help them articulate it. And once
Yes.
they've articulated, simple.
Do you have like a form or like a get them to journal? Like, what's the method? It's basically just conversation. Like,
It's a lot of I do have obviously questions that I normally ask, but I mean, in the end, for me, it's just conversation. I mean, it's
yeah,
just me getting to know them, getting to know their product, getting to know their restaurant, getting to know their life story. I mean,
yeah.
for me, I mean, once I figured that out, it just flows.
So natural to you, but like you said, we both know we've seen it. People shy, people not knowing like where to even start, and so unconfident sometimes. And it's really, I think, sometimes sad to see when someone is super
It
talented.
is. It is. It truly is. But I mean, like I said, this is an unnatural state. It's not normal for people to get in front of a camera and talk about their lives. I mean, for some people, it comes fairly naturally. And I mean, it's amazing to see those people do what they do. But for most people, it's not. And that's why I'm here, I guess. I'm just here to help them with that process. And it is a process.
And I'm going to leave it at that. Like, how do people reach you? I think that's if, a lot of our community, they're going to start a business eventually. And yeah, if they decide, okay, we're going to take PR seriously. And I say seriously because don't go to Joey if you're not serious.
I'm on the internet. I'm easy to find. I'm not hard to find at all.
Okay, fine. What's the best? Is it email then? How should people reach you?
Um, I've gotten clients who have reached me by phone, by email. I mean, I as a rule, I always take a meeting. I mean, I will always sit down with people who want to engage me. I mean, from one meeting, you can pretty much tell if this is going to be a fit or not. So,
That's a good skill to have, I think. It's very
yeah.
intuitive. But hey, thank you for your time. I really
Oh,
learned a
thank
lot.
you.
This was a lot of fun, and it's funny because I feel like when you're talking about books and like how you think, it's kind of you're mirroring a lot of the stuff that I feel and believe. And yeah, it's been nice to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this podcast. If you got value from this episode, rate and review the podcast. It really helps other people find out about the show. If you want to break down a couple of my tips and insights from this, head to onyourplate.substack.com. I write it all there. And if you just want to have a conversation with me, go to Instagram, slide into my DMs at @Beatrindad_, and I'd love to have a chat with you. See you next time.